Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Court remands former head of the Pension Reform Task Team, Abdul Rashid Maina, and his son Faisal in prison, pending the commencement of their trial over alleged money laundering. President Buhari returns to Abuja after attending the three-day Russia-Africa summit in Sochi. Nigerian community in Witbank, South Africa, count their losses following last Tuesday's attack on their businesses, allegedly led by a taxi association. And at least 21 people killed as violence sweeps across Iraq in a fresh wave of anti-government protests. For more information on our top stories and others, do visit our website, channelstv.com. YouTube.com/channelsweb has videos of our shows. Now let's take another look at Nigeria's rising debt profile, and to discuss it, I'm now being joined live from Abuja by a development economist, Professor Ken Ife. Thanks so much for joining us on the pen.
Thank you very much.
Right,
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome. Now, there's been no shortage of opinions since the finance minister said what we have is more of a revenue problem than a debt crisis. Do you think we have a debt crisis?
The minister is correct. We don't have a debt crisis. What we do have is a revenue crisis. We are not even experiencing a high degree of fiscal stress. And we have not broken any law. If you look at the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007, it stipulated that the deficit to GDP should not exceed 3%. We've not exceeded that. Then on the issue of the external borrowing to GDP and domestic borrowing to GDP and government, the amount set up for debt service to government revenue, it didn't set those. It expected a future assembly to do that. They haven't done that. So we followed the international benchmarks. The benchmark on external borrowing to GDP is 40%. In fact, to be honest with you, Forbes voted Nigeria as the best debt-managed country in Africa. And I have the figures here. When you look at the comparators, America, we looked at the debt, the reserves, and their GDP, debt to GDP ratio. Those three parameters. If you look at those, Italy was coming out at 131% debt to GDP. US was borrowing 21 trillion, though they have only 125 billion in their reserve. But it's 75% debt to GDP. You look at even China and Egypt is about 104% debt to GDP. Nigeria is 21%. We are the farthest. In fact, Forbes fell short of saying Nigeria was the best managed in the world. But it just tells you, but I can understand the anxiety from everybody. Nobody wants to go through what we went through in 2005. But that does not mean that we cannot build the economy. We have to build the economy. The argument is, what are you borrowing the money for? First of all, the FRA says money should be, external borrowing should be for capital project, and it has to be so, otherwise you break the law. But apart from being for capital project, we should only focus, in my view, on those capital projects which are capable of retiring the loan. For example, if you take money to power, you know you will get your money back. There are some areas, if you're going for a road, get toll gates in, get private sector in, so you can get this money back. And also, apart from recovering the money, let it activate other economic sectors in so doing. So those infrastructure should have implications, should build our base. So that is the issue. Then you come to debt servicing. Debt servicing, yes, to GDP, even on paper, at 2.45 trillion to a revenue, expected revenue of 8.155 trillion. It's good on paper because it's less than 40%. It's about 30%.
Okay,
but
Prof, sorry to have to interrupt you, Prof. I'm sorry to have to interrupt you. I know you're reeling out those figures and you've talked about Forbes, etc. But when you look at the IMF report, it has talked about just how high the figure is right now from 8 years ago, 128%. My question to you is, if we continue to borrow at the level we're borrowing, do you think it will not have some sort of an adverse effect down the line quickly?
No, I don't think so. The thing is, as the debt is increasing, so is our GDP increasing. So you have to focus on the debt to GDP ratio. And also, critically, what is the money being borrowed for? We have to build our infrastructure. You will never attract businesses into the economy if you don't have the infrastructure. They don't come here and leave their core business and start building your infrastructure for you. So that is the argument. Then those things that are not viable and not sustainable, use the government revenue to do those. But of course, we have to tackle the case of raising the revenue from taxation. I'm so surprised people are screaming about 2.5% increase in VAT when we are a nation at war. Most countries at war of the size of Nigeria have 30% war tax. And we're still here trying to make things work. But we are at war and all the geopolitical zones. So we have to show some sympathy to what is going on. But then the assurance from government that that 2.5% increase in VAT is going to go to infrastructure and the human capital development, which is education and health, is very reassuring. And then do it discreetly. Even then, Nigeria is a low-tax constituency. At 7.5% is half of the average rate in Africa. And then at 6% revenue tax to GDP, we are still the lowest in Africa. So we will have to continue to expand the tax base, deal with illicit transfers, and have more creative ways of generating more revenue, deepen the bond market, bring more creative financing mechanisms like Sukuk bond and green bond, all of those to deepen the market and widen the party. So those are the measures that have to be taken. But I haven't seen anything wrong. We are not in any debt crisis by any description.
All right, development economist Professor Ken Ife, thank you for joining us on the News at 10 tonight.
My pleasure.
The federal government is seeking stronger collaboration with private medical practitioners to achieve the year 2030 United Nations Universal Health Coverage target. A top official of the Ministry of Health, Mr. Sani Gusau, made the remarks at the 2019 Scientific Conference of the National Guild of Medical Directors in Abuja. According to him, there's an urgent need for medical practitioners to work hard and reverse the lack of confidence that many citizens have regarding the nation's health sector.
The United Nations Year 2030 target for universal health coverage may be 10 years away, but for some medical practitioners, the time is ticking very fast, and the current state of healthcare services in Nigeria cast a gloomy picture on the attainment of this target. Little wonder the 2019 Scientific Conference of the Guild of Medical Directors holding in Abuja deliberates on new strategies to ensure that the universal health coverage target is met. For some of them, the way forward is that of building a strong collaboration with the private sector.
We're only as strong as our weakest link, so we really need you and need everyone in the room to support the work that we're doing. Have a little bit of faith in your government. Nigeria will never be able to provide universal health coverage only from the public sector. We need your support as we do this. And we have an excellent leadership at the moment in the Ministry of Health.
At the moment, private practice needs to be much better integrated into the overall healthcare in the country. For instance, the point of access of the populace to the NHIS should be the qualified private clinic closest to them.
Universal health coverage is a term that promotes access to quality and affordable healthcare services without exposing patients to financial hardship. Although Nigeria is committed to this course, available statistics at the Ministry of Health suggest that the nation is far from achieving the target. Out-of-pocket spending for health is well over 70%, and health insurance penetration is just a little above 5%. Over $1 billion American is also wasted each year on medical tourism. The Health Ministry says there is need to regain public confidence in the nation's health sector in order to reverse this trend.
Patients have very low confidence in our system. Why? We are commissioning a study to investigate this, but we all know the answer. Many private hospitals abroad are run by Nigerians. And when you leave Nigeria, go for medical tourism, it's the same Nigerian doctors that see you. So how do we reverse this lack of confidence?
However, some health financing experts still believe that all hope is not lost, provided that the 2014 National Health Act, which stipulates that 1% of consolidated revenue should be allocated for the health sector is diligently implemented, and the nation's health insurance scheme is made to function properly within the next 10 years.
Let's cross over to Abuja now. Here's Linda Akigbe. Linda?
Hello, Ijoma. Now, Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo believes that the country's diverse culture is a potent tool in the process of nation building and not a challenge. The Vice President was speaking at a town hall meeting at the Oba Akenzua Cultural Center in Benin City, the Edo State capital, as part of activities lined up for the 32nd National Festival for Arts and Culture, NAFEST 2019. The Vice President says the federal government is promoting arts and culture as part of efforts to steer the economy away from oil dependence.
Professor Yemi Osinbajo is the special guest at this town hall at the Oba Akenzua II Cultural Center in Benin City, the Edo State capital. Participants in this meeting are drawn from different sectors to discuss on leveraging Nigeria's rich culture and tradition to boost the economy.
Benin City is already on the global map of heritage.
For the Edo State government, hosting the National Festival of Arts and Culture, NAFEST, affords the opportunity to showcase the rich tradition of the people.
We believe that within our tradition, we possess a culture of tools with which to positively change our future for the better. Secondly, our administration is committed to leveraging our cultural capital to drive investments in the tourism sector.
The audience get the chance to raise issues affecting arts and culture development in Nigeria.
We want the Vice President, sir, to help us to regime the practice of arts, culture.
After taking in the inputs from the floor, Professor Osinbajo is the last to speak. He says that arts and culture is a potential revenue earner in the post-crude oil economy.
Tourism is clearly one sector which has untold potential for growth. Edo State is clearly blazing a trail in this direction. I think the governor has rightly prioritized arts and culture, and by showcasing its rich heritage, Edo State will attract global attention for all of the right reasons.
The message remains that the synergy between arts and culture, if well managed, could be channeled to broaden the country's economic base, as well as provide employment for the teeming population of Nigeria's unemployed youth.
When the News at 10 returns, at least 21 people have been killed as violence sweeps across Iraq in a fresh wave of anti-government protests. And more coming from our London bureau in Around the World in 5. Join us again.